What is the dumbest idea you have ever had that actually worked? I stuck my neck out for an ex-con on house arrest at my job. He interviewed well, but his availability was horrible between the ankle bracelet and meeting with his PO, drug treatment program, etc. My GM said no and I said I'm doing it anyway. The first night he worked there, I found myself in a bind. He was the only person scheduled in the kitchen from 8 to 10 p. and I had no one who knew the kitchen besides myself, because our store had a wicked virus traveling around. I told him, look, dude, we're pretty fricked back here, and I'm going to try to keep my cool but I can't promise. And because I'm the only manager on duty, I might have to run to the front drive-thru. Well, this guy mastered production in about an hour. He was faster than my GM on the grills and fryers, and his attitude was so good. I waited on nothing and he even tried to help me make sandwiches and send them out. He also managed to clean up the entire kitchen. He eventually moved to maintenance and fixed all the crap the previous guy ignored in a day. Then he moved to service for more hours when the hour restrictions came off and was great with the Karens. My GM got over the ankle bracelet, record, and tattoos, and actually hired him for his house flipping business. All because I said we need freaking employees, and you can't be picky when he's the only guy I've interviewed in a month. And who knows how you may have changed that guy's life. Ex-cons have a tough time getting back out into the world, especially if on parole. Oftentimes it leads them back to crime and prison. Honestly, he sounds like he had the drive to succeed anyways, even if you didn't hire him. But you didn't, it paid off for you. Your boss, the ex-con. In college one year I had a particularly rough finals week with multiple big projects due the same day. One class I had an A in and one I was borderline CD. I determined that if I didn't do the project for the A class, I'd drop down to a C, but the teacher let you resubmit things after they got graded for up to 70% credit if you did worse than that the first time. The project for that class, RE, was a machine learning program where you would get some training data and then real data and be graded on what you said the expected results were for each piece of input data. Just to turn something in and planning to fix it after I had done the other project for the class I was almost failing. I decided to make my program just return whatever the input was as the result. The weekend passes, I finish the other project, and pass the class for that one, and I get the grade for the IE project. I had gotten a 30%, with a comment from the professor that I had gotten lucky and didn't deserve even that much, and after doing some math, I discovered that was enough to bump me up from a C to a B, and a B was the highest I could get with only getting a maximum of 70% on the project, so I decided to just leave it at that and not redo it. Had a video card die on me, thought that maybe the solder had melted away from it overheating, so I had the idea to stick it in the oven briefly to melt the solder into place. Looked online and it is apparently a normal thing to do. Worked like a charm. This is really an issue because of lead-free solder, because they think kids might chew on a graphics card. It's the reason the Xbox had the red ring, the PS3 had the yellow light, etc. Something broke on the front wheel of my car while I was on a cross-country trip, and it made a terrible noise and smoke. It was the middle of the night and the shops in the town we pulled into were all closed. I jacked it up to see what was wrong, took off the wheel, and then the jack tipped over and the car dropped onto the exposed brake disc. I did it again and the same thing happened. I jacked it up again, still couldn't figure out what was wrong, put the wheel back on, and whatever it was had been fixed by the jolts. I drove that car for years with no further problems. Sounds like a used car dealership troubleshooting technique, or Russian. In college my buddy and I took an investing class, and for one of the projects we had a month to invest fake dollars into the stock market and see which team would have the most money after a month. It was spring semester, so we put all of our fake money into Heinz, thinking there would be a spike in ketchup and mustard sales as the weather got warmer. The next day, Berkshire Hathaway purchased the entire Heinz company and the professor accused us of insider trading. We had no idea what we were doing. If I stop showing coworkers how to use Excel, I'll get to do all the easy Excel stuff while simultaneously being patted on the back for doing the hard stuff on the team no one else could. Basically, unless you want to be super upper management and give your life to your work, play clueless. Don't let them know you could simplify a report that takes several days into literally minutes. SHHHHHHHHH. Someone else will take tech credit and then you'd have more to do. Utility company wanted me to fill out my last month's bill amount when registering to pay my very first bill online. I put in a for that field, thinking this was just going to a database lookup, and maybe they weren't sanitizing their database inputs. Sure enough, I was right, and it worked. I am very antisocial and don't get along with people. Don't go out and dread to talk to anyone. School trauma, I guess. So I moved in a house with 9 strangers as flatmates to force myself to interact with people. So far I enjoyed it living there. I am no longer afraid of talking to them. Met many nice other people that even like me. One dude let me draw on his face after he came without costume to the Halloween party and was so happy. He even recognized me a week later, shouted my name and hugged me. Others complimented my gunshot wound I made. They really care about what I did and do. They are nice and I like them. TLDR. I hate people. Moved in with a bunch of them. Don't think they are so scary anymore. When I was in college we had to sneak beer and other booze into the dorms, as it was a dry campus and we were also under 21. Fortunately for us, we lived in an old converted motel, so we would remove the air conditioner from the wall, which gave us direct access to outside. Once we also removed the grate on the outside. Since we lived on the ground floor, we then made 2 hinges for the grate on the outside, so it would stay attached and could swing open and closed. When we wanted to sneak stuff in, we would jiggle the AC unit loose and remove it, pulling it into the room, swing open the grate, and pass the booze through. I consider it brilliant, but many others thought we were stupid. Worked every time though. I threw my keys up to my wife. They landed on the roof. Apartments, so we didn't have a ladder, and it was after hours. It was getting ready to rain. So, I took 3 paper clips, an AA battery, and a cord. The rope kind, not like a power cord. Taped the 3 paper clips around the batter to make a large 3-pronged fish hook. Then after about 100 attempts to fish my keys off the roof I finally got a nibble. A good tug pulled them over the storm drain, and the rope was just long enough that the lanyard barely touched the ground. Didn't even break my free on board. Easy there MacGyver. After school engineering program, we were supposed to make tiny boats from aluminum foil and whichever team's boat could carry the heaviest weight without sinking would win. My team's boat was tied for first place and I happened to be snacking on a mini pretzels. As a joke I decided to add a piece of pretzel to our boat. The other team had 2 pieces and their boat sunk. We won. I jumped in a puddle with a frozen sheet of ice on top to get out of doing a test I didn't study for in elementary school. Soaked and freezing. I told my teacher that I slipped and fell. She called my mother to pick me up and I got another day to study. It was below 0 and I could have gotten hypothermia or something, but I guess it worked. It worked the first time. My buddies and I were driving down the street, about a quarter mile. There were no more spots in the car so I couldn't fit, but I didn't feel like walking. I stood on the back bumper and held onto the top of the car. We drove the quarter mile at about 25-30 miles an hour with me holding on for dear life and we made it fairly quickly. The second time we did this I fell off, broke an arm, got a concussion and wicked scars. Took a class on Greek history my senior year in college because my roommate said the professor was cool and the class was easy. Well, cool and easy are relative. My roommate was a classics major and knew Greek history inside and out. He was also a genius, so everything was easy. Anyway, we had our first test that covered everything we learned so far, like chapters 1-8 in the textbook, or so I thought. It was also on the intro to the book even though we never reviewed or discussed it in class. Apparently the professor emphasized this in the class before the test, but I wasn't there. I stay up all night cramming for the test and feel great as I'm taking it the next day until I get to the last essay question, which was worth 25% of the grade and said something like, according to the textbook intro, name one and explain it. Frick, this never came up in class or in the rest of the textbook. So I rack my brain for something even remotely coherent and remember an episode of Jeopardy about when Crete was supposedly discovered or something. So make up some nonsense about how because the Odyssey was written in XXX but Crete wasn't discovered until YYY, then it couldn't be Crete. Thought I might get points for writing more than 100 words, but fully expecting to max out at a C. The following week, the prof is giving out the graded tests. He's making a bit of a show of it, commenting on how the class did overall and calling out a few people that really whiffed in a kind of funny, not too harsh way, but still pretty embarrassing. And he's given out everyone's but mine. And then we have Mr. Trunk. Mr. Trunk didn't show up to the last class before the test and apparently didn't talk to anyone that did. How do I know this? Because his answer to the last essay wasn't even close to anything that was in the book. The whole class is looking at me. My roommate is trying to contain his laughter. A girl I was into was giving me a sad, pitiful, must suck to be you face. I'm beat read. However, after rereading it a few times, I was curious. So I handed it to the chair of the department and asked him to read it. He laughed because the answer was just, well, dumb. But then started to scratch his head. You see, while Mr. Trunk didn't do the assigned reading, he has identified a sixth, and perhaps better answer than what was in the book. So, reluctantly, I'm giving him full credit, and we reached out to the author and suggested he include an update in the next edition. Next time though, Mr. Trunk, please just do the reading. It was great. Best part was that my roommate missed something minor and wound up losing a few points, so I pulled a better mark. Was really poor when my future wife and I exited college. Went on a cruise with friends and didn't have a lot of money to spend. Cruise wouldn't allow you to bring alcohol on board and we weren't willing to pay for drinks due to budget. Purchased a liter-sized sealed bottle of water and some cheap rum. Drilled a hole in the bottom to drain the water and funnel in the rum. Then superglued the bottom again. Water was caught by ship security scanner but guard said it's just water and let us through. We had cheap mixed drinks for the duration. We look back on those days fondly. We wouldn't never think of doing that today, but it was funny back when we were young. My friend did the same trick, but used an empty liter bottle of mouthwash, filled it with clear spirit, a few drops of food coloring, and bingo, as long as you don't mind the visual of your drink being bright blue, green, purple. My headphones kept cutting out, so I took a toothpick and scraped the inside of the headphone jack on my phone. Several clumps of dust fell out, and afterwards the headphones worked just fine. Did the same with the charging port on my phone. I'd been assuming the contacts were broken or the cable was, but no, the plug just wasn't staying in well enough. I poured transmission fluid in my gas when I was 16 to make my car mimic the smoking from the tailpipe like in the movie Uncle Buck. It worked too well. People were pee. When I was in the Coast Guard, I was rearranging my room in my apartment and had sat my TV on the edge of the bed. While I was moving my desk, I heard a loud thump and turned around to see that my TV had fallen off of my bed and was sitting face down on the floor. I picked it up and turned it on and the screen was just blue and wouldn't do anything else. I sat there for a few minutes wondering if I could even afford another TV before the dumbest idea hit me. Maybe if I sit it back on the edge of my bed and give it a slight nudge to land face down again, it will bump everything inside back into place and fix it. I laughed at myself for even thinking it but then was like, well, worst case is that it's still so I did it. I hopelessly plugged it back in and to my surprise, it turned right on and worked just fine again. I still laugh and shake my head every time I think about it. I had to propose an experiment for class that had to do anything with molecular biology. I proposed completely getting rid of CD4+ cells and then reinserting stem cells to regenerate their lost immune system as a treatment for AIDS. I got 95% for that assignment. My father was in the military for a while when our country still had active civic duty. He was stationed in Germany. They had the assignment to hide their rocket launcher in the woods as good as possible, and some officers would check in on them every once in a while. At the same time, they had to watch out for the officers. The assignment took place at night, so somewhere late afternoon nightish, they went their way, and they encountered a local farmer. They asked him if they could maybe sleep in the barn when they were not on watch. He told them yes, and that they could also put the rocket launcher in the barn if they wished. They decided they would. They also spread a lot of twigs across the area so they could hear the officers coming, and quickly go out and pretend they were on watch. At night, they heard the twigs break several times, but the officers never thought to check the barn. They were never found and completed it and were told they did very well. while they were just sleeping in the hay. Changing the brakes on my rusted out Pose VW, but the lug nuts, bolts actually, were totally froze so we couldn't get them off. Even tried bouncing up and down on a breaker with a 3 feet cheater pipe, so we made sure breaker bar was on nice and tight, started it up, and drove backwards until the pipe hit the ground and then drove it off. It worked. We did the same for the other side going forward. Couldn't believe we didn't shear any bolts or lose a wheel. For future reference, pull up instead of pushing down when trying to torque the lug nuts off. At most pushing down you can apply your weight with a bit of a bounce. If you pull up like a deadlift you can pull with hundreds of pounds of force. I was pulled over for speeding by a state trooper with a car full of friends in college. I didn't have time to explain to them what I was about to do, and to just go with it. Officer is walking with that swagger walk they do when they do they're gonna write a ticket, and he comes up to the window and I'm having a full-on asthma attack, wheezing and rocking back and forth saying my inhaler ran out. Trying to get to a Walgreens for a new one, the guy was like, oh crap, follow me. I got a police escort to buy a pack of gum. Got out of the ticket. Most would have called an ambulance. You got pretty lucky. Had a knack as a teen to fix electronics with whatever I can. I had a laptop turned desktop on account of it being permanently affixed to a chair, on a box, next to my bed. The charger had fallen to crap, but that was nothing that couldn't be fixed with a knife, some tin foil and a crap ton of sellotape. Also I had a router that kept overheating. Luckily it was kept next to the chest freezer, hanging on the inside by its wires. It spent 2 years working without issue until the freezer packed up. Honestly, I'm not sure how I'm alive. In my high school engineering class we were tasked with designing a marble sorter and challenged to sort the marbles faster than other groups with high accuracy. We had 3 different marbles of differing materials: wood, plastic, metal. We were given plenty of options to sort the marbles. Most groups used light sensors and other electronics to sort the marbles. My partner and I decided to sort our marbles by bouncing the marbles. The plastic marbles bounced the furthest, wood a little shorter, and metal did not bounce. We essentially made a tower and a couple funnels to keep the marbles from bottlenecking, as that screwed up our tests. We designed boxes for each marble type and placed them at various distances from the tower. We ended up winning the challenges 9 times out of 10. We sorted the marbles with 100% accuracy in the fastest, less than 10 seconds, whereas other groups took 2 minutes. Me and my friends wanted to get into this fancy expensive club, but it was sold out, plus V expensive. We got into the club next to it for free, and there was a hallway connecting it to the other club. We sweet talked the bodyguard saying that this party sucked BC, it was empty and we were ripped off. We hadn't even paid to get in, and to please let us cross the hallway into the other club. He freaking agreed. We were all shook and had a really fun night at that fancy club without paying at all. Mixing strong coffee with Monster Energy. It worked because I wrote half a book in one sitting. It was dumb because, well, hey Ferb, I know what I'm going to do today. So I was in orchestra, practicing with my section, basses and cellos, so it was small. We were trying to use a metronome but we couldn't get it loud enough. So I had the idea to gather all the metronomes in the class and sync them together, and a combined volume would make it so we could hear. I don't know if we were good or if we just got lucky, but we successfully synced 15 metronomes and used them to keep rhythm as we played. Surprising, since it's almost impossible to sync metronomes. Metronomes will sync automatically if their timing is close enough, and if they're placed on a surface that will transmit their motion to the others. EDT. Oh wait, you said digital. In that case it's probably not so surprising that they stayed in sync. Whenever I wanted to play this MMO I had to wait for a little thing in the bottom right to disappear before the game actually opened. I think it was something for cheater protection, but the internet I had was really slow, so this took a while. What ended up shortening the time was me opening up Task Manager and closing the thing myself. I used to be a lecturer, desperate to get students to pay attention. At some point during my 2nd or 3rd year I grew quite tired raising my voice to shut everyone up. So I decided to just stand stock still, staring at the far wall during a lecture. It was awkward as heck for everyone, including myself, but everyone was silent within 10 seconds or so. This turned into something of a signature move, which I still use in presentations sometimes. Junior year of high school, all the pretty horses was assigned reading for my English literature class. I found MacArthur's style, specifically his lack of basic punctuation, very irksome, so I chose not to read it. The day of our written exam on the novel, my very untraditional eclectic teacher told the class that if you didn't read the book, she'd rather you just said so instead of wasting her time bullshitting your way through the essay. I took her at her word, wrote, "I didn't read this because I don't think the use of punctuation is a stylistic choice," and ended up getting an 85. It was the right, albeit stupid risky, decision, since many other kids in my class that also hadn't read the book but still tried to write an essay failed the exam. My friend always shows up late to everything and I got pretty sick of it, so from now on I told him the time to be here by, but it was 2 hours earlier. LOL. He always shows up early now, but I think he is catching on. LOL. I do this regularly with people. It's usually only about 30 minutes. With my ex it wasn't about being late, but about wanting to leave. He was one of those long goodbyes people, so I would give him the hint it was time to start heading home about an hour beforehand. Had one of those jackets that are black on the outside and had like a plaid lining inside. Doing some dumb teenager crap like underage drinking. Cops were chasing me. Ran into bar. Pulled my jacket inside out. Took off my hat. They couldn't find me anymore. And people say the GTA car A color is stupid and the cops would find you. I was in my bedroom packing to move. I was sitting in the floor going through stuff. Picked up a fork. Looked at the electric socket in the wall and said, I wonder if this would electrocute me. It did. And knowing is half the battle. Not sure if this qualifies as dumb, but I can say the same of many of these comments. It was at a time when I desperately needed a short-term loan. I deposited about $600 cash into an inside bank ATM, which malfunctioned and swallowed my money, leaving a lone $20 in the tray. I was pissed. But I quickly saw an opportunity. When I was on the phone with the customer service agent, I said I lost $1,500, not $400. They said they needed 2 weeks to process a request of that size. I was rightfully outraged. I just lost $1,500. They returned my money within a week. Of course the error was reversed, but it took about a month longer to process. By that time, my personal problem was fixed, and I had their money waiting in my account. In college I was driving my friends around, annoyingly honking the horn to the music. All of a sudden blue lights. I tell the guys in the car to let me handle it. Cop walks up and asks, was that your horn? And I said, yes sir. There's a short in the horn, so I'm actually going home right now and just disconnecting it until I can figure out the issue. Cop says okay, you do that. So I start the car and immediately lay on the horn and get right back to holding the beat with the music and drive away. He followed me for about half a mile before turning off. To marry my high school boyfriend when I was 19. I'm 34 now and I still get excited when I hear his car pull into the drive after work. There was a dead branch still attached to a tree hanging over my dad's driveway. While we were playing a game of horse I pointed it out and he acknowledged that he was concerned that it might come down when he or my mom were pulling in and hit their cars. As a joke I picked up the basketball and just launched it at this branch. First try, I hit it dead center and it collapsed in the driveway. I did my best to look like I totally meant to do that and told my dad there, now you don't have to worry about it anymore. Had some gas cans that were leaking gas since the protective cap had disappeared broken. I got the bright idea to use chewed gum to prevent spillage. Worked like a charm. In my early 20s I decided to skip classes and hop on the train from San Diego to Los Angeles to visit friends. I had no money and no ticket. The train car was empty. When the guy came by to check my ticket, I put on an English accent, better than most but nowhere near authentic, and explained that my passport and money were lost and I had to get to the British consulate for assistance. He was so charmed by my fake story that he let me sit with the conductor, honk at intersections and smoke cigarettes during the whole ride. Maybe he knew and just wanted to see how long you would continue to fake the accent. I once told a patient who was non-compliant and attacking staff that Mr. Rogers would be disappointed in how he was acting. He was horrified and demanded I do no such thing, and participated in all following treatments. He later cleared up mentally and was discharged in the following days. Never underestimate the power of Mr. Rogers. When I was young I was taking a geography quiz on Europe and forgot which was Sweden and which was Norway, so I thought n equals north and north is up, but if north were to fall left or right it would fall left, so I put Norway on the left and Sweden on the right. It makes entirely no sense, but it got me the 100. Norway is basically on top of Sweden, based on Europe map, so the north-south was just easier. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.